What is up, guys? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We are here for, of course, the UFC 266 preview. It's the first one that I've done for a little while. 2 weeks off. Obviously, last week we missed Anthony Smith's impressive win against Ryan Spann. But we're here today to see Alexander Volkanovski against Brian Ortega, the tough coaches for this season, of course, on The Ultimate Fighter. We saw those two matches in the middleweight and bantamweight division a couple of weeks ago also. But it's now the coach's turn to step into the octagon and fight for the featherweight title. And of course, in the flyweight division, we've got Valentina Shevchenko taking on, of course, Lauren Murphy, who's on a 5-fight win streak, but very much still the underdog going into this bout. Pardon me, and of course, we've also got Nick Diaz's return, 6 years out of the cage, coming back in there. There's a lot of talk about whether he should be in there or whether he wants to be in there this week. And obviously, he's rematching Robbie Lawler, a rematch that's 17 years in the making, 209 months apart. Of course, that stat's been given around the MMA world this week. But it's a stacked card. It's an absolute stacked card. And of course, we have to start at the top with Alexander Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega. Of course, this fight was meant to happen back in March. But unfortunately, Volkanovski did test positive for COVID, and that then put in the building blocks then to become the Ultimate Fighting Champion coaches on the most recent series, of course. A fantastic season, I think. Maybe not the most most rivaled series, although it did build up. It did start getting a bit feisty in episode 4 or 5 once Brian Ortega started getting 4-0 and getting a little bit cocky. And then, of course, you saw Alexander Volkanovski take it over from there and really push on. And in fact, both of these guys won on that season, of course. Ricky Tercios and Brian Battle, of course, both of them became Ultimate Fighting Champions in their respective division. But tonight and this week, you see Alex Volkanovski get really riled up. Obviously he's down there between the filming and now that, Brian Ortega did get popped for taking performance-enhancing drugs, of course, and that's not sat well with the champion. Originally, he said that Ortega deserved to be there, but after that sort of scenario, that situation that's been found out, by the champion, he no longer deserves, to be fighting for the belt. He don't deserve the belt because of his history with drugs and performance enhancers, of course, and that's a very, valid response and opinion of Alexander Volkanovski, who's, worked hard to get to where he is. He's someone who's become quite, I don't want to say disliked. He's a very lovable character, but in terms of his champion status, it seems like it's still very much in the question that he's the undisputed champion, especially going 10 rounds with Max Holloway. Many people thought Holloway won the first one. Many people thought Holloway won the second one. So he doesn't really get his dues. Alex Volkanovski, considering he's got an absolutely stacked resume. He's beaten Holloway twice. He beat Jose Aldo. He beat Chad Mendes, and he's on a 19-fight win streak. So he absolutely deserves to be in the spot he is right now as the undisputed featherweight champion. And Brian Ortega's coming around this from that very damaging loss to Max Holloway. He's come back and rebuilt himself. He looked fantastic against Korean Zombie, and of course is rightfully the guy fighting for the belt tonight. I think many people want the Holloway trilogy, but once you're 2-0, you kind of do need to get that win back under your belt, as Holloway's done with Calvin Kattar, and now fighting Yair Rodriguez on November 13th, which we'll talk about, of course. But, Volkanovski deserves his respect, and I think he's going to earn his respect tonight in this title bout. I do think he gets a win done. We'll talk about that in a little bit and why later, but let's have a look at the tape, of course. And as you see, 22-1 versus 15-1, 5-6 versus 5-8. But ironically, it's Alexander Volkanovski with the longer reach. 2.5 reach advantage there for Volkanovski. But of course, you see Ortega, dominates in the leg reach with a 3-inch reach advantage. So it's going to be interesting to see how they both utilize that differences. Of course, Volkanovski's going to want to get in there probably more than likely for a lot of overhand rights, overhand lefts, uses kicks. But he's very smart when it comes to changing his fight plan in the middle of the fight, in between rounds. He's got a fantastic fight IQ when it comes to his management of the fight, and that was what won him to fight in the second time against Max Holloway, because he was getting pieced up in the first 2 rounds against Holloway, and then he turned it on in the third and rightfully became a hand still. For Brian Ortega, I think it's interesting to see how he's portrayed. I don't really know if he's a heel or a face. In terms of the promotional side, he comes across very authentic, very original. very real. But sometimes he comes across a little bit dark, a little bit sinister, maybe a little bit of the bad guy in him. Obviously, he comes from LA. He comes from a background where it's a tough upbringing, a tough. You have to be a tough person to come through those upbringings. Living in LA, in those areas of LA at least as well. So obviously he's got that toughness, that grit about him, that pressure on his shoulders sort of thing coming from where he's grown up. And he came across very well, but obviously there was a couple issues that built up. Obviously, my primary one is his lateness to training sessions, 2 sessions to recording, that Alex Volkanovski very much took notice to, and displeasure to as well. Getting annoyed with his lack of punctuality, which I think is there, especially with Alexander Volkanovski. He's come from that city kickboxing camp, although it's not his main gym anymore. He's come under those sort of disciplines, I guess you could say, with turning up on time, making sure everyone's fully looked after, making it a family, rather than maybe Brian Ortega coming in and feeling he's the big guy, that he's the reason why they're there, so to speak. But to have that sort of that audacity to turn up late for your tutors and student sessions, it's a bit different when you're the student turning up late to a session because it's your own downfall that you've trained because of the latest. It's your own time that you're missing out at the gym. But when you're doing it to students who are looking to get their break into the UFC, or who are looking to seek that guidance, it can be very disrespectful. I think you owe that as a tutor and as a trainer to turn up to your students' sessions on time and the appropriate coaching times. As I think Alexander Volkanovski did, he built up a family in that side of the camp, and it showed as the season went on. Yes, he had a slow start, but he took over and won every fight from fight 5 to the final. And I think that's what is gonna happen tonight. I think again, Alex Volkanovski is pointing fingers at Brian Ortega, cutting corners, hence the drug cheating problem. And Brian Ortega himself has said he was partying the fight week of Max Holloway. It looks like he does, maybe not cut corners, but he's not the ultimate professional. And maybe I think the professionalism that Alexander Volkanovski displays in terms of putting that time in the gym, that extra time in the gym, is one, why he is champion right now, and two, why he probably will be and still champion come the end of the belt. But again, Brian Ortega is a very dangerous character. He's got fantastic jiu-jitsu. If you're looking at his highlight reels, fantastic guillotines, which could come in handy tonight, especially being the taller guy. Volkanovski's going to have to come underneath him a lot of times, and that can leave him exposed. It can leave him exposed to the uppercuts that we saw against Frankie Edgar from Brian Ortega. So there's definitely points and times where Alex Volkanovski can be damaged, can potentially be finished. We see Brian Ortega become a champion, and how fantastic would that be to see 2 years or 3 years even after that fight against Max Holloway? I guess at that point, you saw he was still young and still quite raw. But I don't think many expected him to be in a title fight 2-3 years later, especially with that amount of time he took off. But he rebuilt himself, looked fantastic, got a brand new team in, and he looked great against the Korean Zombie, put in a fantastic career best performance, you could say. He dominated that fight. The spinning elbow, fantastic. He showed an upgraded skill set, not more so just very good jiu-jitsu, incredible jiu-jitsu even, but he showed good boxing, and he showed he can manage the fight, he can pace a fight, and that's why he won that fight and is where he is. So he deserves to be here. I just think when it comes to all said and done, I think Volkanovski just has a little bit more heart and maybe a little bit more champions mentality going into this bout. But of course, looking at the rankings, it was announced yesterday that Max Holloway will be fighting Yair Rodriguez, which I think is a strange time to announce it. Of course, this title is meant to happen in July, but I think there's a unanimous sort of vote here for Max Holloway to be the number one contender for whoever wins this fight, whether it's a trilogy with Alexander Volkanovski or a rematch with Brian Ortega. And for Max to be going into that fight not as a champion again is something very spectacular to see, especially how the first fight between Max Holloway and Brian Ortega went. I don't think anyone would have said that if we see a rematch here, it's to be Brian Ortega's walking out as the champion at the start of the fight even. But yes, I think Max Holloway, he probably is. He's probably the best featherweight there is at the moment. That sounds harsh on Alex Volkanovski because he's got 2 wins over him, but definitely Max Holloway seems to be the gem in this division, so to speak. And Yair Rodriguez is a tough fight for him. It's probably a fight he didn't want take right after a title fight being played out, because again, Dana's famous saying, just see how it plays out. Could very much be waking up tomorrow and wanting Holloway to fight either one of these, and saying that he has a good chance of becoming champion. But now he's got to fight a dangerous guy. He really gets. Who Max Holloway will be favourite over, and probably rightfully so. But we've seen the highlight reel of Rodriguez and what he can produce and possess, and a win for either of these one will certainly, no doubtedly, put them into a title bout. Obviously, got Zabit in the question marks in the wings. Maybe talks about him in retirement now because of the injuries and health issues. Obviously, got Calvin Cater coming off that loss. Got Quinzon coming off that loss to Brian Ortega. Arnold Allen and Giga Chikadze are probably the next in line for that talk title contention. But again, they probably need a win. Giga Chikadze very hot to call out Max Holloway. Probably smartly as well knowing he's the number one contender and the one that gets the most eyeballs in this division also. And obviously Arnold Allen undefeated. So maybe put Arnold Allen up against someone like the Korean Zombie or Calvin Cater, or the loser Yair and Max. And obviously Giga Chikadze could probably have the loser tonight, maybe. Whether that's Brian Ortega or Alexander Volkanovski, who knows. But both of those deserve big fights next. And both of those are, in my opinion, above the pecking order of title contention and claiming stakes for a title fight than the Korean Zombie and Calvin Cater are right now. So yes, my prediction is Alexander Volkanovski. I think it does go to first. I think it does go to 5 rounds. Sorry, for Volkanovski. And I think he gets your decision win. But to caveat that, I wouldn't be surprised to see Brian Ortega get a finish, particularly a submission finish in this fight either. Especially if Volkanovski gets tired, which I don't think he does. It's more I think maybe gets a little bit too confident if the fight's going too much his way, or he just gets caught, and it can happen in the sport. You can get caught with a guillotine, you can get caught with a rear naked choke, and you go left when you should go on right. Or you have definitely see a knockout in the sense that how Ortega knocked out Frankie Edgar with the height difference. I think there's a flurry of ways that Brian Ortega can win, but I think Alexander Volkanovski is someone who he can see that finish line and he knows how to get to that finish line now. And maybe we see him go 20 fights unbeaten, which is actually a phenomenal run for the Australian, of course. And that moves on nicely to Valentina Shevchenko. Of course, she's taken on Lauren Murphy tonight. A 5-fight win streak for Lauren Murphy, but no one's given her a chance. This division's almost disrespectful how good Valentina Shevchenko is. Of course, it's a 6th title fight since becoming champion against Yuni and Jacek. Again on that Holloway Ortega card as well. Since then, she beat Jessica Rye, Liz Carmouche, Caitlin Chikagan, Jennifer Maia, and Jessica Andrade in April. So she kept her arena active. She's fighting twice a year, and she'll round that out tonight as well when she makes the walk. Hopefully, if she makes a walk, there's still time left, but she's always very dedicated to her craft. And it's difficult to see anything else but Valentina Shevchenko win, doesn't it? Especially with how dominant she's been in the performances. The elbows from the crucifix position against Jessica Andrade was phenomenal. Jennifer Maia I thought looked good for the first 2 rounds, and I thought Valentina Shevchenko, put her foot down and said, "I'm the champion here, let's go," and took the fight over from there. Obviously, the Caitlin Chikagan, same sort of scenario to the Jessica Andrade fight, and Jessica Rye, that vicious head kick knockout, which we could see again tonight. But Lauren Murphy's gritty. As I mentioned, she's on a 5-fight win streak, the only one in the division at the moment with a streak of some sort, and especially to that nature. No one's got above a 2-fight win streak, maybe, or a 3-fight win streak in my thoughts, or in my opinion, so to speak. Obviously, she did beat Joanne Calderwood by split decision. Joanne Calderwood again, almost done over again. She was supposed to fight Valentina last year. Unfortunately, Valentina had to pull out due to injury, and obviously Joanne thought Jennifer Maia lost that fight. She beat Jessica Rye, and then she lost to Lauren Murphy. Of course, had a split decision, but back in June. So it's been a quick turnaround also for Lauren Murphy. But she, as I mentioned, she's on the 5-fight win streak. 2 of those included Andrea Lee and Roxanne Modafferi, all decisions. She has got 2 finishes as well in that 5. And if there was an upset in the flyweight division, I would like to see it being Lauren Murphy, especially as Doria's soccer mum has got into the sport quite late. She's 38 years of age, so she hasn't got too much left time on her side. She is 15-4. But again, it's almost impossible to look at Valentina Shevchenko losing to anyone in this division right now. unless it's a Tatiana Suarez or an Alexa Grasso, someone that comes up through this division quite quickly. Obviously, Tatiana Suarez was highly ranked in the strawweight division, but she's obviously going through a lot of injuries right now, and we'll have to see how she returns. It'll be 2 years out of the cage at that point, of course, maybe even 3 years by that point. But yes, I think, whether you're looking at a champion outside of that division, whether it's Zhang Weili, a former champion, if she, maybe she beats Rose Namajunas, you could see that. But I'd like to see Zhang Weili versus Valentina at 125. You could see Rose, if Rose beats Zhang Weili again, I think you could potentially see Rose versus Valentina also for a champ attempt, you could say. If she wants to go up and fight Nunes, fantastic. I think that trilogy fight is, ready to be made. It's just that both of those do have contenders, especially with Nunes being a two-weight champion. She's got contenders at both divisions, although she's cleaned out a featherweight. Unless Norma Dumont beats Holly Holm, of course, and obviously bantamweight even. She's got a fight, Pena, of course, Juliana Pena. So both of them have got their work cut out, and you probably see the trilogy be made this time next year. I think the only way that we see her no longer the flyweight champion is if Nunes maybe moves up to a featherweight, on a compulsory, on a long-term basis maybe, and drops the bantamweight title, or Valentina then goes and beats Amanda Nunes for that bantamweight title in a trilogy bout, and maybe she vacates the flyweight title and does her work in bantamweight maybe. But she's got this division on lock at the moment. I think we see it again tonight, of course. To have a look at the tape, of course, 21-3 against 5-4, both the same height, same reach, and same leg reach, of course. So identical statures in fighters. So maybe that could work out for Lauren Murphy. But I just think Valentina Shevchenko is going to get the job done. I predict a third round finish. Maybe I think Murphy gives it a good first round, and then Valentina shows the levels of the game and how many levels she is ahead of the competition, and probably gets a stoppage in the third round, whether it's a head kick or a finish in the crucifix. Because she seems to like that. She's a bit sinister in that sense, that she likes to get people stuck and pinned down with no hope, almost like a cat playing with a mouse. No, it's going to chase it and chase it and chase it, and then eventually it's going to pull out of this misery. And Valentina Shevchenko does that to a T. And to have a look at the ranks, of course, obviously she's beaten Jessica Andrade, she beat Chikagan, she beat Maya. Cynthia Calvillo's fighting tonight against Jessica Andrade. If Cynthia Calvillo beats Jessica Andrade, you could probably see that fight happening again. Or you probably have to look at the rematch between Kat and Chikagan. Obviously Joan Cordwood is still that in the wings down in 6th. But she's got to look at maybe beating a Jennifer Murray, Chikagan, Laura Murphy, or maybe the loser tonight if it is Jessica Andrade. You can see Joan Cordwood with us. Andrade, but it's going to be a tough fight for her nonetheless. In fact, she's got a contract signed, doesn't she? Who thought, I'm not sure right here, but she did put a message out on Instagram saying that she's walking down the aisle getting married, so congratulations to her. And then making the walk down the octagon in 8-9 weeks, I think it is now. So November, December, I'd expect. So yes, a tough division to break into, but Valentina Shevchenko is very much so still, and still the champion, and I expect that going into tomorrow morning. Now, of course, we've got the return of Nick Diaz, 6 years into the game, well, 6 years out of the game, should we even say? He's going to come back in. He's been absolutely fantastic. I was saying it on the MMA Casuals preview that went out yesterday. Go check it out. That there's a whole generation of fight fans, of UFC fans that have never seen Nick Diaz in the cage. Those that come through Conor McGregor, especially, they would have come in 2016, 2015, maybe on that latter end of the mesmerizing run that Conor McGregor made, and they wouldn't have seen Nick Diaz those seasons, and so they wouldn't have seen the performances of Nick Diaz in Strikeforce, the likes against Paul Daly. They wouldn't have seen that. They would have seen highlights, of course, and they probably seen a brash, playful, maybe arrogant fighter. But he's certainly come out this week. And if you listen to the more historians, the more the fans that have been around a lot longer and seen Nick Diaz, there's an argument going between those fans saying that this is Nick Diaz. He's very quiet. He's someone who doesn't like the limelight. He doesn't give the most mesmerizing sound bites like his brother Nate does. But obviously you got the new style fans that are used to Nate's sound bites and putting that with Nick Diaz, because obviously they're brothers in the same camp, and they're going, Nick Diaz shouldn't probably be here. He's not giving us anything sort of valuable to hold on to other than maybe a call out to Kamaru Usman, which I think newer fans jumped onto more than the older fans did of the sport, especially with how dominant Usman's been, of course. But Nick Diaz, it's going to be a fun one to see how he turns up. Equally, how Robbie Lawler is going to turn up as well. Again, there's a whole generation of fans that probably haven't seen Robbie Lawler win, or put on a performance that Robbie Lawler is known for, like the Rory McDonald fights. We haven't seen Robbie Lawler in his peak. We haven't seen Robbie Lawler look too great, especially that defeat at Colby Covington gave him. It always stands out in my mind as a proper beatdown over 5 rounds. I think it was 300 punches landed as well by Colby Covington. I believe it was the record, or it might be the record, if not for the whole UFC, at least in that weight division. Of course, he's now 185 because Nick Diaz asked for it to be 185, and obviously Robbie Lawler obliged that, just as the fighter he is, the man he is. But 28-15, he hasn't won a fight since Nodal Cerrone in 2017. He lost to Rafael Daniels, the Ben Askren loss, which, it might be a bit of a controversial loss on the record because people thought maybe the fight should have been stopped. With the infamous Robbie Lawler takedown and the punches that Ben Askren broke up, of course. And then there was talk about the bulldog choke as well, that maybe Lawler was he out, of course. But then he got battered by Colby Covington, and then he lost to Neil Magny. So this is a good fight for Nick Diaz to step in. No, it isn't a Damian Maia retiring Woodley. Should he have been here still? No, it isn't that fighter that's in the latter end of his career, but still possesses a lot of danger. But Ruthless Robbie Lawler, it's going to be interesting to see just how he performs, and if he can get a win, of course, that'd make it 1-1 in the battle between Nick Diaz and Robbie Lawler, and maybe sets up trilogy bouts, maybe. But if Nick Diaz wins, I'd expect maybe Robbie Lawler to lose. I do think Robbie Lawler is quite content as where he is in his career right now. He knows he's not on the rise, on the peak of his powers where he was the welterweight champion, but he knows that he's coming towards the end, and he's there for a good time and put on some good displays. Obviously, of course, Nick Diaz, his previous 3 fights were an Anderson Silva no contest due to marijuana and testing positive. George St. Pierre and Carlos Conduit. So, he's got a fantastic resume. And us fans do need to put a bit of respect in there, especially fans that came later on in the sport. Whether he wins or loses tonight, we need to admire and respect what Nick Diaz has done to the sport, as we do with Robbie Lawler, to be fair. As I mentioned, the Tyron Woodley, the Donald Cerrone's, the Clay Guidas, the BJ Pence, the people and fighters that built this sport up to the next level. Joseph Benavidez, you could certainly put in that category too. Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman, Luke Rockhold are stands that came into the later sport, the 2015, the 2016, 2017. We haven't seen the best of those who built the foundation of where the sport is right now. And of course, Conor McGregor, Francis Ngannou, Adesanya, Jorge Masvidal's lifted it up a level or two since then with the popularity of the sport. But we need to pay our dues and our respect to the elder statesmen of the sport who helped build the sport to where it is and to why we love it. And this is a fight that I think, sort of epitomizes that we've got 2 legends of the sport, 2 Hall of Fames of the sport coming together and just putting on a good bout. And hopefully it doesn't look, like 2 fighters that shouldn't be in the cage, who should be retired almost. A couple of years ago, we'd have been joking and laughing at this to be a Bellator fight. So we don't want to see that, but we just want to see 2 competitors go at it. And I do think Nick Diaz does get a victory tonight. There's a fantasy romanticizing maybe element of this fight that Nick Diaz comes back and gets a win. Whether that's positive or negative for his career, we don't know, especially what he was saying this week about him not liking it or enjoying fighting. He's just here because, the money and the sponsors are almost telling him to, I guess, was his sort of message that he was putting across, maybe. But he looked very quiet, and he looked like he was just getting everything back in together again. It was his first fight week in a while, and it just looks like he was just adjusting to that sort of pressure, that sort of environment once again. Because albeit he's a veteran in the sport, 26 and 9, it's the first time in 6 years he's had to do those sort of media duties. So yes, I do think Nick Diaz gets a win. I think it goes to the decision. But it's interesting that, again, this fight is 5 rounds. Obviously, we had the change in weight. I don't know why it's 5 rounds. I think it would have been better at 3. But again, I do think we see 5 rounds of this. And hopefully we see a Nick Diaz win and maybe see what happens in the future for him. And that is the same as with Curtis Blaydes and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Obviously, on the main card, this heavyweight bout between 2 guys. They're in a bit of a sticky situation. That's the whole of the division. Obviously, we've got to find out what happens with Steve. Now we've got to find out what John Jones happens. There's talk about when John Jones was sticking. He was only talking on Thursday. that he wants to fight in Q2 of 2022 against Cyril Gane or Francis Ngannou, whoever wins that fight. But of course, he's been arrested, so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. As and when he can fight, if he can fight in the next 12 months, even. Obviously, got Stipe Miocic waiting maybe for that trilogy bout. So between these two, Curtis Blades already lost to Derek Lewis by a vicious knockout. Obviously, Derek Lewis lost the interim title fight against Cyril Gane. So it's interesting where he stands here. Of course, before that, he was on a 4-fight win streak, having beaten Alex Volkanovski, then Junior Dos Santos in those last 2 wins that he had. But Rosenstruck, I think, here is a guy I'm backing 12-2. Of course, he got that win against Augusto Sakai, the first round finish. But before that, he had that quite tame loss to Cyril Gane, both two fantastic kickboxers that respected each other's skills, and in return didn't give us the best fight, the most fantastic fight that maybe was expected. And obviously he beat Junior Dos Santos prior to that, and before that he then lost to Ngannou back in May 2020 when the sport reopened, and the champion, the future champion, at that point, put on a fantastic display to finish Ngannou in just 20 seconds. Rosenstruck in 20 seconds even. So yes, I do think Rosenstruck gets the win tonight. I think he's going to probably finish Curtis Blades. I think Curtis Blades does get knocked out. I think, especially we're in this bigger octagon, it's going to be a lot longer for Curtis Blades to get to Rosenstruck, and that gives Rosenstruck enough time to, work his kicks, throwing enough cut here or there, a hook, and I think he's going to hurt Curtis Blades. Maybe in the first or second round, and then get the finish, and come out with this a victory on 13-2. Now, the biggest mistake or question mark on his career was calling out Francis Ngannou. So it'd be interesting to see who he does call out should he win tonight. Obviously, against Alistair Overeem, then he lost 24 minutes and 59 seconds of it fight, only to come away with a knockout victory. So, he got a huge push on that, maybe a bit too quickly, you could say, because he quite clearly wasn't ready for Francis Ngannou, albeit, that left hook could have missed and he could have landed one of his own, and Ngannou was close. And, who knows where we would be at that point of the sport. But maybe he calls that Stipe. Stipe would be a good shout. Maybe he calls that Derek Lewis, a fantastic shout also. But again, I do think Rosenstruck gets the victory. But as we mentioned, this division is in a bit of a sticky spot now. Obviously, we've got to see what happens between Gane and Ngannou. That's going to probably happen in January, I imagine, if not February. And then obviously, you just got to work out where Stipe and Derek, Alexander Volkov is, etc. Of course, as well. But yes, I do think Rosenstruck gets it done. As we go back to the flyweight division, but Jessica Andrade versus Cynthia Calvillo, a fantastic fight to open the card. As we know now, the pay-per-views getting stacked to increase that pay-per-view buy it number, that income revenue for the UFC with him. It's packed out arena, packed out card. You got Dan Hooker, Marlon Moraes. That is Philly all on the prelims, and we've got Nasrat on there of course as well. Fighting Dan Hooker even. I think there's, out of the 4 fights that we've got in the prelim, 7 of them are ranked fighters, which you rarely see on a prelim. But it just shows you the magnitude of this card and how this card's been built. And it does affect the fight night cards in the Apex on ESPN, of course, they're a little weak because they probably lost a co-main event or a main event to this card on either side, whether that was next week or the week that's just gone. But it's definitely a fantastic card. And I think, be interested to see if Cynthia Calvillo gets a win, because Jessica Andrade still is #1 contender. If she wins, she's not going to get an immediate rematch based on what we saw against Valentina Shevchenko, with all due respect. But obviously, Cynthia Calvillo made her way up to this division. She lost to Caitlin Chikagian in a weak performance, but she beat Jessica Rai by decision. So if she beats Jessica Andrade tonight, she will definitely be back in title contention, and probably maybe next in line for Valentina Shevchenko. And I have gone through her to get the win tonight. Of course, Andrade has lost 3 of their last 4. Win against Chikagian with that kick hook to the body. Of course, you remember that earned her the title shot against Valentina, but she's lost to Zhang Weili, Rose Namajunas, and Valentina Shevchenko, all 3 champions now. So not bad losses to have on your record. They're not bad names to be losing to either. But she needs to get back and win column tonight. She maybe wants to have a look at getting that title opportunity once again. But again, as I said, I believe Cynthia Calvillo will be doing more than enough to get that victory tonight, and certainly put herself into title contention. And maybe up against Joanne Calderwood. Maybe we've got to work out how the logistics of this work. Maybe Lauren Murphy wins tonight and throws out a rematch, maybe with Valentina Shevchenko. We don't know in the sport. But, you know, if I was a betting man and I've done my UFC picks, I've gone with Cynthia Calvillo and Valentina Shevchenko to win tonight and maybe progress into a title bout, which you'd have to say would heavily favour, obviously, Valentina Shevchenko. Now, the biggest fight this week, and one that's probably been the most talked about, maybe not, neither of these fighters have been given their dues and respect, is Dan Hooker versus Nasrat Haqparast. Of course, I always forget which way the Q&P is. So I do apologise on the starter there, but Dan Hooker versus Nasrat Haqparast, fantastic fight. You know, this is a main card worthy fight. Of course, if you remember, Dan Hooker couldn't get his visa until Monday, and only throughout Thursday, I believe, till Friday, made weight 155, if not 155.5, so he's close to championship weight, if not on championship weight, as did Haqparast, of course. No, unfortunately, he lost his mother 2 weeks ago, which condolences out to him. But, you know, he kept in camp. And even he had his own visa issues, didn't he? And he only just made it to the fight on Thursday as well. So both of these are going to be interesting to see how that travel has affected him, of course, coming from different locations. Then coming out from New Zealand, of course. So it's going to be interesting to see how their guest tank is, especially after such a short time acclimatized to Vegas, having to make that weight cut and then immediately competing. But I guess it's almost like a tournament format with IMAF, I guess. It's a very quick turnaround in terms of turning up and fighting. So maybe it helps this fight, especially on the mental side of it, just to get in and get back out almost benefits Dan Hooker, especially Dan Hooker, who's come off that knockout loss to Michael Chandler back in January. He's had a wild year. Of course, he came in, welcomed Chandler to UFC. That didn't go well. Had to stay in Abu Dhabi for a month because of the restrictions in place in New Zealand. Of course, he comes at the back end of the year, still restricted in New Zealand, can hardly leave the country, and has to, you know, fight tooth and nail to get his visas sorted so he can fight tonight. I do think this does go to the full distance. I think these two give us a good first, second round, and maybe tire out in the third, if not later in the second. And I do think Dan Hooker gets it done. I want to see it back in the win column. I'm a huge fan of Dan Hooker and what's going on at City Kickboxing. Of course, he's 8th in the division, so a huge fight for Nasrat. If Nasrat gets the win, boosts him straight up into that top 10. But I do think Dan Hooker does get the victory tonight. So let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Let us know your thoughts. Are you backing Alexander Volkanovski or Brian Ortega? Or in the flyweight division, are you looking at Valentina Shevchenko? Or maybe you're looking at feeling a bit lucky with Lauren Murphy getting the victory tonight, becoming their new. And of course, Nick Diaz return. What is your thoughts on Nick Diaz? Will he get the victory tonight? Will he have a dream return, so to speak, or will Robbie Lawler make it 1-1? And then we have a conversation tomorrow on Monday morning about Nick Diaz's return. Should he have already returned to the UFC? You know, because even on Thursday in the press conference, he was saying he's going to be here for a long while. Depending on what happens, the quick turnaround, whether he wins or loses. So yes, I'm going to leave it there, guys. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to drop this video a like, and of course follow us on social medias at CageChat MMA across Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, of course. And I'll see you guys on the next video.